Humans only have one ending.
Get that Barbie!
Ideas live forever.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Backlot Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel. I am joined today by my co-host who, as far as I know, has no genitals, Tanner Extra, and today we're here to talk about the film event of the summer. We've been actually saying that quite a bit recently. There's been a lot of film events, but I think Barbie and Oppenheimer might be the combo to end all combos. But if you have seen Barbie, we would love to hear your thoughts about this movie. It's going to be one talked about for a while and potentially until the Oscars ceremony. But of course, you can do that in our comment section or in our Discord server, which has a link in our description. And there's a subscribe button and a like button, and those are fun to play with. Trust me.
Click them a whole bunch.
First-hand account.
Yeah, click them a whole bunch, but make sure that you land on liked and subscribed, I would say.
Exactly. Click them an odd number of times. Yes. Tanner, we have now seen Barbie and Oppenheimer. Our lives have been changed forever, and I want to hear what you thought about the first half of that combo, Barbie.
Tucker, I really enjoyed Barbie. I think Barbie is a very, very good film. I think there's a lot to love about Barbie. I think the performances are fantastic. I think it's one of the best studio comedies that we've gotten in a number of years. Certainly the most inventive studio comedy that we've gotten, potentially ever, from my film knowledge. And yeah, I mean, it's just fantastically directed by Greta Gerwig. Everything in it looks fantastic when we're in Barbie Land. The writing by Baumbach and Gerwig is fantastic. I think there are, much like an optical illusion. I think if you look at this thing from a certain angle, you're like, corporate cynicism, something like that, yada, yada, yada. But I've never had a smile on my face for longer than I think watching a movie than I think that I did when I watched Barbie.
Wow. Yeah. That is very high praise. Yeah. Coming out of something like, I don't know, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning.
yes.
Or Top Gun Maverick last year. Barbie stands amongst those, apparently, and I agree. I think this is a very good movie, and there are a few things that hold it back from being great for me, but they come down to very subjective sort of taste things that we get into regarding the comedy. And as you were alluding to, I do view it a little bit from a cynical angle. But the great thing about Barbie is even when you look at it from a cynical angle and your mind is trying to like convince you, maybe this is some sort of corporate thing, it's so charming and so well done in its production and has such a confident message to portray from the lens of Greta Gerwig as a director and writer that stuff's kind of pushed to the side. You're like, okay, well, but still, most of this movie is great and great performances and a fun cast and crazy action set pieces, quote unquote, and comedy set pieces, and it is a really, really, really fun movie. Yeah. And I think I want to start a little bit with what grabs me most about this movie, which is its commitment to its production design. I think the production design is this movie's greatest strength, and among many great strengths, but you don't see this kind of commitment to production design almost at all anymore. I mean, I guess Avatar has some pretty good commitment to production design, but the amount of variety of sets and backgrounds and matte backdrops and little plasticky bits that they're interacting with, there's no stone left unturned here in the world of Barbie, and I found that commitment to be incredibly impressive, especially to the scale that they end up going on in this movie. I mean, Barbie Land isn't like a couple of houses. There are multiple streets that we look down, and there's a whole beach set, and there's a whole neighborhood set, and I really love the variety in the production design that the quality of production design they were able to show.
Yeah, I mean, it's all real, or if it's not all real, it certainly looks all real. But from what I'm led to believe from, plenty of behind the scenes stuff, because they really were showing this off, justifiably so, that it is all real stuff. I mean, that cul-de-sac thing is really interesting. It all feels like to like a doll scale. Like the houses are only maybe, I don't know, 2.5 people tall. Maybe. So yeah, it really has that like playhouse sort of scale and feel to it from that perspective. And then the opening of the film, after you get like the teaser trailer bit at the beginning of the movie, is just sort of showcasing all of this and having fun with it, having some comedic bits with it, where obviously no water comes out of the shower thing, Barbie doesn't actually drink anything from the cup or anything like that. And
the pool is made of plastic.
The pool is made of
so they just
plastic.
walk on
The
it.
car the car has this very strange way of moving that it's sort of, when you're looking at it with two people just sitting in the driver and passenger seat, it looks like it's going pretty fast. But then when we zoom out, it's like just sort of like meandering down this road. The wheels aren't really moving. I guess they might be, but it does have that like an invisible child's hand sort of moving it along this road. So yeah, just from a filmmaking perspective as well, they really have a fun time with this production design.
Yeah, and it especially sells it with how colorful it is, and then
of course,
how different it is with the juxtaposition of the real world that they end up going to. And the Mattel office, I think, is also a great set. Mm-hmm. There are some great moments of production design there and lighting. But then it is juxtaposed against just like Santa Monica Pier and like I don't know, like a normal shop,
Century City
school. Yeah, and I'm like, huh. Our real world doesn't look anything like Barbie.
Sadly.
What is another point that you would like to focus in on?
Tucker, let's talk about Barbie and Ken. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Let's talk about Margot Robbie first, because Ryan Gosling is getting a lot of attention on the old campaign trail, I guess, for promoting Barbie before when actors could be doing that, But I think Margot Robbie is maybe a little unsung here, because she doesn't get to have fun quotes about, like, I'm bringing Kenergy to this. Bring all your Kenergy. We're all Kenning all over each other. Mm-hmm. Margot Robbie is obviously the titular role here, and
many women are the titular role.
Well, of course, but she is stereotypical Barbie, as we come to know her in the film. Where she is the base Barbie, and she doesn't have a profession or anything like that. She is... And this is the point of conflict in the movie. She is sort of this cultural dilution of being the perfect woman, of perfect beauty standards, perfect attitude, perfect everything. Yeah. And then that comes into conflict with reality, as we come to know it. Yes. The plot of this film is a little like there's talk of rifts in reality and time, space, and stuff like that. They have some,
but it doesn't really.
They have some fun with that as well. All the gobbledygook language that they use, but ultimately, it hinges on Margot Robbie's performance, on her coming out of this idealized Barbie Land dream world where they have fixed feminism and equal rights in the real world, and then the rude awakening she has when she actually goes there, and it goes further than that as well, which is something I really appreciate. Wherein that reflects onto Barbie this sort of feeling of, what am I good for then? What am I made for? As the Billie Eilish song asks in this film, and Margot Robbie plays all that insecurity, that like deep inner crushing feeling of self-consciousness, of self-doubt, very, very well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think that it is that taking it the next step further that makes this movie really something special to me, because as we'll talk about in a little bit, the first bits are like basically just comedy sketches for 45 minutes, but when you hit that last act of the movie especially, and the themes about insecurity and gender roles become more they're expressed a lot clearer and come into conflict a lot stronger. That is, I think, is where Margot Robbie's performance really sells itself, and it's the fact that she's able to do both that makes her one of the best performances of this year. As you get her acting just all perfect and all smiles and flawlessly dressed and looking flawless and all of that, and then by the end of the movie, when she is stressed and uncertain about her place in the world, the look in her eyes as she's realizing that she's not who she thought she was and doesn't know what her place in the world is, I think is both thematically very interesting and performance-wise very interesting. So absolutely, I think that's one of the strongest aspects of this film, and it plays into what makes this film special thematically as well. Yeah. And it bounces off very nicely against Ken, who doesn't get as much time to lean into the thematics, because he's kind of he is like the thematic crux. But Ryan Gosling, I think, he's getting more flowers because he's doing more physically in like space with his performance.
Excuse the turn.
Margot Robbie's a lot more like internal acting and like in her eyes and facial muscles.
Yeah, excuse the turn of phrase, but Margot Robbie and Barbie is maybe more closely related to what would be a comedic straight man in this film.
Sure. Oh yeah, no, definitely.
And
because
Ken
she's not
and everyone
really
else.
cracking as many jokes.
Ken and everyone else is the point and laugh at the fool, the clown, and.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy is Ryan Gosling just clowning around in this movie. Just
man.
all of his mannerisms, all of his line readings are just comedic gold, really, for 90% of this film. And then it does become time for him to sort of adopt the patriarchy as he talks about it in this, like, reverence now that he has learned about it from the real world.
So stupid.
And transform Barbie's dream house into a Ken Mojo Dojo Casa house. And like... exude all this comedically over-the-top male bravado all over everything. That's the Kenergy that he was talking about, I think. And he's great. Listen, he's great. He gets a musical sequence, as has been released online, called I'm Just Ken. He nails it. He nails everything, all the costume design, all the... That first time you see him on the beach, which we've seen in the trailer as well, where he's, like, trying to get Barbie to notice him. Ken only has a good day if Barbie looks at him. Ryan Gosling is just nailing these steps every step of the way, I guess.
Yeah, and he's the kind of character where he's written to be both annoying and kind of hateable at times, but because Ryan Gosling has this smirk and this charm to him that we know from watching other movies that he's been in, he sells this as a guy who's lovable, but like doesn't want to be lovable. Like he wants to be cool, and he wants to make sure that everyone respects him. But you see this like softer side to him that he doesn't really show off. And I think that in those comedic beats that turn into thematic comedic beats near the end, and then also some more poignant stuff in like one of his last scenes, Ryan Gosling is carrying a lot of the work being done here in terms of the comedy of this movie. And it's also, I think, the way in which he bounces off of all the other Barbies that makes his Barbies and Kens that makes his performance so special. Because honestly, he and Margot Robbie don't share as many scenes as I thought they would. And because they're separated for a good chunk of the movie. And so a lot of the comedy doesn't actually come from the two of them interacting with one another, but with Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling as Barbie and Ken interacting with their large supporting cast, which is another great strength of this movie, is the idea that every character is a Barbie or every character is a Ken, and what does that mean for their identity? And
most characters are Barbies or Kens.
You're right. like 95% of them are Barbies or Kens. That's a good point. So I'm sorry to Alan and Mitch.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that in a second, because yes, the entire supporting cast is fantastic. I was gonna ask you, Tucker, do you have a favorite of the supporting cast of the Barbies and Kens? And I thought about that for myself for a second. I'm like, I don't know if I have a favorite aside from Michael Cera as Alan, who
he definitely stands out.
Well, for purposeful reasons, obviously, that he is the only Alan, and as he said, I'm confused about that. Because I don't know what it is about Michael Cera, but every time you just flash his face on screen, I laugh. I laugh every single time. I don't know what it is about him, that they got him doing goofy stuff sometimes, but sometimes he's just there for a reaction shot. And I'm still busting a goddamn gut because he's so funny. And obviously they do give him stuff to work with. They give him very comedic lines. He's not okay with what happens to Barbie Land when the Kens sort of learn about patriarchy. And he's along for the ride for the third act plan that the Barbies have, and it's all great. He has a fight sequence of his own as well, which is a lot of fun.
He does, yeah. For me, I think some of the standout supporting Barbie/Ken performances come from Alexandra Shipp and Emma Mackey as two of Barbie's close friends who like live next door to her and she's constantly interacting with. I think they both bring a very interesting energy, and most of the Barbies have like a very similar energy, but those two definitely stood out to me. But I think for me, with the Kens, it's Kingsley Ben-Adir, who really sells a lot of like background comedic bits. And you're just like looking at his facial expressions. He's going, and I was always laughing whenever he was on screen, and he's like he's like kind of like a scaredy Ken,
Yeah.
in a way, and I thought that was really funny, especially bouncing off the bravado of Ryan Gosling as Ken, having someone else who's a little less confident and he kind of is like like a servant almost.
Well, yeah,
to
like,
Ryan Gosling, and I like their dynamic. I thought he was so funny.
Yeah, I do really like their dynamic. Because I think he exudes more just on the surface the insecurity that is the sort of the crux for all of the Kens, and the point of like the gender commentary I think that Gerwig and Baumbach are making here as a writing duo.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, and they give it to us very early on, and we say that a lot of that comes to fruition in the third act, but it's there are seeds throughout the rest of the movie as well. There are seeds of with the Ken stuff at the very least between Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu. The first notion of like Ryan Gosling wants to outdo Simu Liu only to make Simu Liu think that he's cool. Like, that's the only reason that he wants to do it. And he loves Barbie, of course, but it's also largely driven by this insecurity that is, even without the patriarchy, there is this, like, male competition to be the best, to be the manliest. And for as many people are coming out and say, for all the dumbasses out there saying Barbie is anti-man or whatever, shut the fuck up and listen to the movie for a goddamn second, because there is gender
It's going to be hard for those kind of people to listen to the movie.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
If you're reading that out of Barbie, you're also the kind of person who's going to hear, like, the incredibly feminist messaging and then want to leave the theater and give it a 1-star review. Yeah. So it is a divisive movie from that angle, but it's not an angle that either of us come from, so we're able to actually appreciate what the writers are doing. And I think that Simu Liu, this is actually his best performance that I've seen. So too. And he really sells the confidence that his Ken has, and the competition, the competitive nature that he has with Ryan Gosling ends up with a lot of the funniest moments in the film. And I honestly, I kind of would have wanted to see him like be involved a little more, because I thought he was actually really good in this. But I think also one of the other unsung heroes of this movie is America Ferrera as the real woman, the actual human person in this movie, and her insecurities are the crux of this all, and the way that she wrestles with who she is as a person, what her role is as a mother, as a woman, as a working woman, and she has some great speeches throughout the movie, and is both the most insecure character, but also the most confident character. And it's a really interesting balance that I think she really nails. And she doesn't get most of the comedic moments, but she's there to sell those more serious moments. And I thought she really did.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about, we talked about how the gender commentary sort of comments upon among the Kens, for everyone who thinks that this movie is anti-man, the dumbest take I've ever heard on the internet, maybe. America Ferrera is really the heart of this, like, feminist critique. I mean, she gets a monologue that I've seen a couple people shouting out on Twitter that is just like speaking all of this cognitive dissonance about being a woman in modern society out into the open, and that becomes like the cure-all to the sort of brainwashing that's going on amongst the Barbies. And that's really interesting. I mean, she obviously sells that moment, and the movie is very much concerned with this cognitive dissonance and fighting your way through it and finding your purpose outside of all of it, frankly. And I think from that standpoint, the film is very strong. And the reason why Greta Gerwig's Barbie got made and deserves to exist, and I'll say it is important and deserves a Best Picture nomination, I think.
Whoa.
Yeah. But should we talk about the sort of the flip side of
the other angle?
The flip side of that of this being a Barbie movie, outside of the importance of Barbie being, like I said, this cultural dilution of beauty standards for women across several decades now. The CEO of Mattel is a character here, and I think it's very much concerned with. It has corporatism and corporate sort of not messaging. What's the word I'm looking for here? Commentary, corporate commentary on it, and there are a lot of jokes made at the expense of corporations and Mattel especially. But for me personally, at least, at the end of the movie, and I won't say what it is, there is still this feeling of like we are operating under the assumption that this corporate IP is a force of good in the world, and you could take it's kind of like six in one hand, half dozen in the other. You know what I mean? Where it's like I can see what they're going for. I can see what Gerwig and Baumbach are going for with this commentary. But also, it's a corporate IP movie, so... But let me know. What do you think, Tucker?
It is a lot of cognitive dissonance for me. And I find it impressive that Greta Gerwig was able to get as much artistry out of this movie as she did in terms of both the artistic themes and the thematic importance of this movie, but also just, how good the editing and the sound design and the visuals and all that are. But at the end of the day, I still get this like sour feeling in my stomach watching Barbie. It's like, it's so sickly sweet that there's like this dark edge to it. I'm like, okay, it's trying to like make me feel that Barbie is cool and that it used to be bad and there used to be all these bad things, but we're fixing them, we're working on them. And so when Barbie might have had negative connotation in the past, that's not us anymore. We're moving forward and we're changing the world for the better. And I'm like, I don't know how much of that is true or reflected in the actual goings on at Mattel as a corporation. What is the gender makeup of the people in charge over there? What kind of Barbies are they still making? Are the Barbies that they used to make, but then make fun of, but then also make fun of in a way that sounds like maybe they want to bring some of them back because they cancel them for bad reasons, or the ones that they're making are bad in certain ways, but are they still making them? There's so many questions that roll around my head watching this movie that continually pokes at the fact that these are toys. This is a thing that and people buy these, and we get money from doing this. And I'm like, well, now you're making a movie that's going to make you a lot of money and fuel those things, for bad or worse, even further. And that, I think, holds it back from being like a true piece of artistry for me. Is there's still this like corporatism is actually maybe kind of good if it helps other people and makes little girls have a good time, and it's like it balances out in a really strange way in my head. But ultimately it still comes down on Greta's side.
Absolutely. I mean, this is still I think Greta Gerwig was maybe, I think she was obviously given some things that you can't touch or can't say here.
Sure.
But if you want to look at it, if you want to find the silver lining of this being like a corporate IP movie, it is like Barbie exists. There is this notion in the film that like sometimes the world is imperfect and imperfect things happen and imperfect things exist, but you have to find a way to make it work and move forward. That's something that's brought up in the movie as well. So I think that is also maybe a way that you can look at the corporate messaging and the existence of Barbie as an actual cultural icon in our world, is the fact that, yes, it does have a negative history. It does have negative connotations for young girls playing with these dolls. But ultimately, we can make it better. It can be positive for young girls as well playing with them.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that's sort of the silver lining that you can take away from this, without giving without giving too much away about like the final sequence of this film.
The final sequence of this movie, I think we talked with our friends last night, I think is the worst part of the movie. And ending it on that increases the sour note that is on my tongue as I'm leaving the theater. I'm like, that feels a little weird.
And we say all of this as two guys who I never played Barbies, never had Barbies. No. My sister had one,
of course.
Or a couple rather. And so from that standpoint, don't have a person.
There's no connection, no personal connection, no nostalgia for these characters, for the dream house, for the aesthetic. That is something that we're divorced from. And I think the movie was able to help me appreciate some of that, the fun poppy nature of it, and the variety of different characters, and Barbie as a character that having all these professions and stuff. It did help me to appreciate that. But you're right, like I don't leave this theater being like, oh, I can't believe they fully realized that cool house that I had as a toy. When
not even that, but what I was going to say was like not even the connection to the toy, but like the personal connection to, this is a girl doll, and this is what I can be when I grow up. That was not something that crossed our minds when we thought of Barbie. So from that standpoint, that's where we're coming at this from. But Tucker, what kind of score would you give Barbie at the end of the day?
Well, there's one final thing that I need to talk about that holds it back from getting a better score I'm going to be giving it, which is I like a lot of the humor in this movie, but I also feel that for me, it steers into a lot of on-the-nose SNL sketchy, like, easy comedy. Like, hey, we're gonna make... I can't even point to specific things because there was a lot going on in this movie, but there were so many moments where it's like, we need to have this happen because Barbie's in the real world, and that's, like, kind of a simple, funny gag. And for the first 30-45 minutes of the movie where we are getting introduced to both Barbie Land and the real world, I'm like, these feel really simple. They feel kind of like easy jokes that you would see done on like a Smosh sketch or something like that. I mean, it had that kind of energy for me, and even though there were great performances and great production design fueling this, I had a hard time finding it clever. Because a lot of, especially at the beginning, I think it gets a lot better in the second half when the Kens take over and there's more thematic value there. That first half of the movie feels very, very easy to me. And so I found myself like equal amounts cringing and actually laughing at some of the comedy.
Sure, yeah. I mean, as I said when I walked out of the theater last night, I do have that cynical part of my brain that was firing off on that standpoint as well. Maybe because we just watched the most cynical movie of the year, Oppenheimer, about an hour beforehand.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But no, yeah. At the forefront of my mind was it's fun. Like, it's a lot of fun, and the jokes are good. They're still very, very funny, I think. And I was having a good time and had a smile on my face, and yeah. I love Barbie. I'm going to give it a 9.3 out of 10.
Sure. I'll go about a point lower. I'm going to go an 8.2 out of 10. Again, I think this is a very good movie, and I think that I might enjoy it more on a rewatch, knowing sort of the corporate nature to it and the sort of SNL sketch nature, and being able to like, dig a little bit deeper into what I like about the themes or the comedic bits or performances that I do really enjoy. But it has enough of those sour tinge notes, both in its SNL easy sketch nature at the beginning and the corporate dark theme at the end, where I'm like, okay, it was sweet all the way through, but it was sweet with a hint of sour, and so it keeps it from being something that I like fully resonate.
Take a
with.
Sour Patch Kid. Sour Patch Kids the movie. Greenlight it, Mattel.
Oh my